Welcome to Unstitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Stanley Ekiyor. We are exploring how educators, leaders, communities can better understand neurodiverse learners and support them in ways that can make them thrive not only in school but in our community. And today I have the honor joining me, Fran Kenton, an educator, innovator with over 40 years experience in traditional and alternative settings, founder at Autonomy Program, a model that blends wellness, social emotional learning, and academic growth to help students thrive, especially those who feel disconnected from traditional school settings. Coach Fran Kenton, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley, and I'm honored for this invitation to share.
We are honored to have you. What inspired you to create the Autonomy Program? Was there a specific moment, an experience that really sparked that idea?
It's the culmination of over 40 years in education. From my earliest teaching years, way back in 1972, before there was even IDEA and any special education services or designation, I saw firsthand that not every student learns in the same way, has the same behaviors, or faces the same kinds of challenges. One thing's for sure, every one of us has life challenges that we must deal with. Nobody is free from stress. I was teaching in a gang-impacted neighborhood at the time, and the kids were affected by trauma, social pressure, instability in the homes, and they were navigating far more than academic challenges. I can remember that class to this day. I can remember their faces and even some of their names. There was Stephen, who couldn't sit still, Lenore, who struggled to learn, Albert, who was extremely oppositional, and Lisa, who couldn't contain her anger. Those were the days, sadly, of corporal punishment. And that never sat well with me. It's not how I was raised. It's a system of negative reinforcers that does not yield positive results. I compare working with young people to the martial art of Aikido, which I know a little bit about. It's like taking energy that comes at you, moving with that energy, flowing with it, and creating something productive out of it, as opposed to coming up against the opposition and creating more opposition and more pain. I was determined to nurture success for those kids. And I saw what they were missing was something profound. Some of them were 15 years old in middle school. They were brothers and sisters of gang kids, and the expectations were clear. They had failed in school. Learning had not been a priority. It was not prioritized in the family. And they had experienced tremendous failure and lost hope for any chance of success. So I knew that my job would be to first create a path for success, helping them see a hopeful path to achieving something positive. I rigged the system in a way and created an alternative education program within the traditional setting. I alerted my principal. I said, I don't want to create failure upon failure. What good is it to grade their tests? We already know what the grades will be. I want to shift the focus to effort. I want to motivate these kids. He said, do whatever you need to do. Just keep them in their seats, keep them in the classroom. My concern is behavior and safety at the school level. Great. That was a free pass. I let the kids know up front. I said, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to punish you. And you will be graded on your effort. I showed them exactly what the system was. I didn't have a label for the kids. I didn't know what the strategies for working with ADHD kids were, or learning disabilities, or any of that. But I did understand we need to meet people where they are, academically, behaviorally, emotionally, whatever, and walk with them at their pace. So I gave kids materials on their level. I let them move at their own pace. Their test scores went up. I cleared the way for success. And that's the method now used in alternative education. I saw potential in those kids, and I saw strengths that I could only dream of having. There was this one little boy, Stephen, who couldn't sit still, and he would jump onto the desk with both feet at the same time.
Mm.
I was pretty athletic, and I looked at that and I said, that's miraculous. But he wasn't doing his work. And I made a deal with him. I said, do you like to dance? And he said, I love to dance. I said, how about this? We're going to put on a show for the PTA, but I need you to try to do your work. You can move around if you need to without bothering others. You need to get work done. I need to see you growing and learning. He said, deal. We put on the most amazing show for the PTA. I put the music on. Stephen went flying through the air, flipping onto the stage. Even the principal stood up, applauding, yelling, screaming, laughing. It was a moment I will never forget, and maybe Stephen won't either. I do know that was a memorable experience for everybody.
But, thank you. That's so powerful. And I'm sure Stephen will see this show and say, yeah, that's me. I'm listening to you and I'm like, wow, this is what we're still preaching and trying to figure out today. Unfortunate. And it sounds like your background really helped you see what students need most to succeed, you know? So, my next question is, for instance, you often say wellness, self, cell, that is social emotional learning, matters just as much as academics. Why do you believe that balance is important?
I saw it firsthand in my teaching experience. We cannot educate young people who can't focus, who can't engage, who are distracted. We can't focus when we're overwhelmed. We can't perform our work in the same way when we're burdened with outside challenges and stressors. How can we expect young people to access curriculum if they're overwhelmed, if they're distracted, if they're dealing with life? It's not easy. Student wellness and social emotional learning are definitely linked to student success. And we've always known that, but now we have the data to prove it. There was a meta-analysis out of the Yale Child Study Center that shows students who have regular access to social emotional learning, to the protective skills that give them the strategies and the tools to manage life and clear the path for learning, receive better grades and better test scores. There was a recent report in the Review of Educational Research that showed kids in SEL programs for an entire school year saw their academic achievement improve nearly one full grade. That's a lot. So now we know cognition and emotion are linked. There's no doubt about it. And I saw it with the kids I taught. If we teach those skills intentionally, we know that we are helping them derive outcomes academically, in their community, in their relationships, at work, their part-time jobs, their future jobs, overall life outcomes. And hopefully, it's like prehab instead of rehab, hopefully prevent them from making unhealthy life choices just to cope. This is a proactive way of giving them the coping skills they need to manage life and to reach potential. So it's not just kids who are experiencing challenges. We've seen growth more palpable and more immediate with the higher achievers because they can take these skills and run with them the next moment. There's a saying in education now, Maslow before Bloom, and I believe it. Meet basic human needs first
First.
and then teach.
Yes. That brings me to my next question. You've touched a little bit on it, but I want us to explore it further. How does autonomy help students build protective life skills?
That's a great question. It leads me to the foundations. We've all heard the maxim, to know thyself is the beginning of all wisdom, right? It's familiar. Starting from that premise, I actually created the autonomy curriculum. It made sense to me as an educator, counselor, and certified health and wellness coach that self-awareness, guided by mindfulness, is our ultimate personal GPS. The autonomy lessons begin by focusing on intrapersonal skills, self-awareness, discovering, activating personal strengths through success stories, emotional regulation, understanding our emotions in the most nuanced way. If we can granulate our articulation, how we're feeling, we can better manage it. So intrapersonal first, and then interpersonal, how we communicate, build and sustain healthy relationships, extending empathy and compassion to others, and understanding bias, where it came from, and why it helped us in years past survive, but now really is a dividing principle for us. Conflict resolution. And what is a conflict? And why do we get into conflicts? That's basic needs versus wants. Deconstructing who we are, our values, and how to make values-based decisions that are healthy and productive and guide us where we want to go. If we lose sight of our values, our decisions won't be as productive as they could be. How do we tap into our own personal genius? How do we become a leader? We have to know who we are first and then bring that self-knowledge to the world. And so what I have created is a path to that knowledge and a bridge to that social awareness and social impact beyond ourselves. The program is grounded in positive psychology, neuroscience, the trans-theoretical model for growth and change. We start and meet each person where they are and walk with them at their own pace. Motivational interviewing, as I mentioned, positive psychology. And how do we make these lessons that are grounded in anthropology, sociology, psychology, biology, physiology, enduring through insight, through perspective sharing with others, through open, non-judgmental conversations with peers and connection with educators? I try to cover overarching themes of wellness and well-being, identity and purpose, relationship and belonging, post-high school transition, so bringing that knowledge beyond high school, and restorative justice to help us understand that conflict is normal, but it's healthy to have a way of restoring relationships. That's the method. There are journals and opportunities to reinforce and plan for enduring sustainable growth and change.
Great. Let's talk about ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Most times students who are diagnosed or have ADHD struggle with the ability to focus, regulate emotions, and stay engaged in class. I know some of the points and the story you told us fit this umbrella. You came up with some beautiful strategies to help that kid. So, how does your program address those unique challenges in a practical way?
That's a many-pronged question. As we know, ADHD makes it really tricky for students to stay focused, to manage those impulses, and to regulate the emotions. It seems like the brain has to be working much faster than the world is moving. It can be very frustrating as a parent and very frustrating as an educator in a classroom with one or more ADHD students. As I said, I've seen this both as a professional and from a personal perspective. So here are a few things that I've seen in a classroom or at home. Students often have to tackle multi-step assignments or instructions. As a teacher, it's important to help the student break down an instruction into small steps. As a parent, it's important to recognize you cannot call out a stream of instructions or requests, do this and then do that and then do the other thing, and expect any of it to get done. One step at a time. Transitions, I've noticed, are also difficult for ADHD students and my own granddaughter. The student will get comfortable in the rhythm of what they are doing, and then they need to put it away or transition to the next step. Recognizing that that is difficult and clearing the path with preparation, with a time timer. There are strategies to help. And let me say, because it can be very frustrating, that There's a benefit to trying different strategies at different times and different ages, because not all strategies work for everyone. And it's so wonderful when you fall on one and you say, yes, this works for now. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the answer forever, because novelty helps, newness helps. The need for activity and small breaks, brain breaks, is helpful. Not punishing when there's non-compliance. Sometimes that non-compliance is not intentional. It's just that impulse, that need that has to be addressed. Letting that young person have opportunities for movement in the classroom or at the dinner table, getting up and moving, or taking a break and running outside. I remember, wow, many times students in my classroom would say, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I need to get up. Coming against that like a brick wall is not helpful. It just intensifies anxiety and resistance. So openness, non-judgmental openness is gold. Conversational tones. Try not to get frustrated or combative, and stay calm. We don't want anxiety and opposition to intensify. We don't want that to intensify. So a structured, calm environment where there are clear expectations, opportunities for implementing necessary strategies at home, in school. Coaches need to be aware of this as well, sports teams. ADHD is pervasive. It doesn't stop in the classroom or at home or on the field. The more educated all people who interact with others are, the easier life will be for everybody.
Okay, that sounds powerful. You used a word, reparation. Can you explain how that applies in this situation?
Did I use it in terms of restorative justice?
Yes, you did.
Restorative justice is a critical piece in forgiveness, repairing relationships, and moving forward. I have a lesson in Autonomy where I address restorative justice specifically. It's like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where a vase might fall to the ground and break and shatter like a relationship. But what the artist will do is pick up the pieces and put them together with gold. The result is different, yet beautiful. It's the same with a relationship. And that relationship can be between parent and child, between peers, between student and educator. Because educators who deal with challenging students, we're human. Educators are human and get triggered, but to restore a relationship through understanding and conversation and sharing of needs and hurts with an open mind is, in fact, gold. And so relationships that are restored are not necessarily going back to the same state they were in originally, but they do come to a new place with a new understanding and a new appreciation for what has been created through conversation, acceptance, openness, and the willingness to share and be vulnerable, which takes courage.
Yeah. Thank you so much for breaking that down and making it very practical and implementable, right? Now, have you noticed those that you have trained to use your systems? What kind of changes, especially those who are doing it with fidelity and being consistent, what kind of changes have you noticed once students start using those tools?
What a wonderful question. I had a hope, a dream, and a vision that through this program, kids would grow, learn about themselves, and have a path to reaching potential. But I knew that this could not happen without the guidance of a trusted adult. And so what I did create was a co-learning coaching program where a little bit of information is delivered, maybe about the brain, maybe about relationships. On the screen, there would be discussion prompts. In real time, students have an opportunity to basically debrief the information with their peers and their facilitator. So what I have seen is educators learning and growing alongside their students, sharing authenticity and forging a bond and greater connection with their students, students sharing experiences and perspectives and values and ideas, thoughts, and feelings with their fellow students. So their connections are deeper, meaningful, and truly authentic. I just last week visited a high school classroom, observed the teacher implementing, facilitating a lesson, and had an opportunity to walk around to the different tables. They were tables of 4, and engage with the kids in these conversations. This was a classroom of advanced placement science kids. The program is being implemented from special education, ED to AP science. I asked the student, can you respond to that question, that prompt? What will you do differently now, having this information than before? And in a nanosecond, that young man said, I just became aware that I can make better use of my time. Another young woman, high school student sitting next to him, said, I can go south sometimes. I need to be a little bit more aware of my mindset. Dr. Stanley, for me, this is a dream come true. That I can witness beyond my own personal classroom, impacting these kids, awakening their consciousness of their potential and how they can impact their future, implementing simple tools like self-awareness, managing your day with more efficiency, being aware of where your time fritters on social media, on your phone. In another classroom that I visited, this was an ED high school classroom, I said, I'm open to your feedback. Any thoughts, any wishes, any ideas? One young man raised his hand and he said, "It's cool. It's cool. I like this. This is fine. Can you share it with my mom?" And then another said, "You know, would you create a lesson on social media? Because I think I have an addiction to my phone." I responded, "I will, and I have. I'm
Good.
open to responding to their needs. I believe that through generative conversations, through understanding that this is a program that they don't have to do, but that it was created for them and they are an active participant in the creation of change in their lives. It's not because an adult is saying something needs to change, it's because they're seeing a path to growth and greater accomplishment and a different way of being."
Interesting. I like that. This is good. About teachers, you said, I hope I'm quoting it right, in autonomy, right? They are
Yes.
partners in wellness, not just rule enforcers. How does this co-learning model change the dynamics in the classroom? Have you received feedback from teachers who have embraced this approach?
Yes. This question highlights the uniqueness of autonomy, a co-learning platform. As opposed to imparting knowledge to students, they participate in self-discovery with students and share authentic experiences respectfully and within boundaries. We can't, as educators, embed skills in a classroom and teach students that which we do not ourselves embody. And it's only now that we're beginning in teacher education classes to address social emotional learning of the educator to be that person, authentic and real and open to connecting, making that human connection. And so this is a way for teachers to learn those skills alongside their students. Recent Panorama study collected data around chronic absenteeism. Prior to COVID, chronic absenteeism was 10%. Post-COVID, 22%. And that's across the nation. And since COVID, it's only fluctuated slightly since then. The question is why? What was happening? And so the Panorama study revealed that at each age group, there were different concerns. Elementary students and their parents had the primary concern of school safety, understandably so. Middle schoolers, if you remember, had transitioned from elementary school to middle school during COVID. They had not yet had the experience of being on a middle school campus. And their biggest concern, school success. How would they actually fit in and achieve academic success sitting in a classroom, having done their work from their bedrooms or their kitchen table with mom and dad? The most revealing for me was high school students. Their biggest need was connection to their educators. Education had become transactional. They wanted to believe their educators really cared about not just their grade and imparting knowledge, but themselves as human beings. They wanted that connection. They needed to feel that their educators genuinely cared about them and were invested in them and their success. And so this is actually where autonomy changes the dynamic. In a short warm-up, a teacher can have an authentic conversation, a human conversation, and learn a little bit more about that student in the classroom they are entrusted to educate. I learned in the alternative education setting that it wasn't discipline that was the most challenging aspect of educating those kids. It was motivation. And what motivated them was if they saw that I personally cared if they were learning, if I personally demonstrated hard work, the hard work I expected from them. That connection, that modeling created or supported, I should say, their success, their investment in education, and their engagement in the classroom.
Yes.
I am passionate.
I like that. Let's go back to a story, right? Maybe a student with ADHD or one from an alternative educational background who really thrived through autonomy. Why I want to ask that question is just to find out from you, what do stories like that teach us about how schools can better balance academic rigor with social emotional growth?
Absolutely. We all have potential, every one of us. That's not always apparent in a classroom, especially in a traditional setting, and really especially in high school. Kids fall through the cracks, especially the kids who are more challenging, because we're dealing with those challenges in the moment and we're not thinking about the future. But if we can tap into what is working as opposed to what is not working, it's about changing perspective. This became clear to me intuitively my first year of teaching. We had a young boy. He loved, his passion was baseball. And he was tough to keep engaged in the classroom, but engage him in a conversation about baseball, and he was off and running. He felt safe in my classroom, but it was a challenge on the yard sometimes. And he got in trouble and he was punished. I'll never forget it because I pleaded and begged to not use his passion as a punishment. And you can only imagine what that punishment was. Took baseball away from him. The one thing that worked, instead of amplifying it and using it as a motivator, I spent many years as an educator with at-risk and special education students. My goal was to highlight student potential and what was working, to give hope, not just to the student, but sometimes the student wouldn't even be in those meetings, but for the parents, to give them hope, to feel pride in what was working and who that their young people, who the young person was. So there are successes in utilizing these skills and providing them for students to clear the path forward to a fulfilling, successful life. So it's hard for me to choose one student, but there's an overarching theme. And then I'll share with you how that actually worked in real time. Strength-based learning, amplify what's working, highlight successes, point it out to the student. Hey, you seem to be really involved in your art. That's what you do when you're lost in time, and what a great skill to have. Or I had one student, Danny, who clearly was very mechanical, but also oppositionally defiant, and developed a passion for weapons. His parents were very responsible. They took whatever they could find in the house and turned them into the sheriffs, who locked them up. And this young man, Danny, he was ADHD, but more than that, he was very oppositional and kind of a dour young man, depressed, I would say. And he had some learning disabilities. Reading did not come easily to him. He did not feel capable, and yet he was in a family of very high achievers. His brother was extremely gifted. His family were professionals, and he struggled to learn. Tutors upon tutors only made him feel weak and not capable at all. It was time to think about graduation. Prior to graduation, we had a program through the State Department of Rehabilitation where we got my students jobs, because I felt that would be really empowering. A paycheck. There's nothing like a paycheck. He would never let me take a photo in the classroom of him at all, but boy, when he got his first paycheck, that was the only time I ever saw him smile for a picture. It was time to graduate, and I said, Danny, if you could do anything, what would you want to do? He says, I want my guns back. And I said, what would you do with them? He says, I don't know exactly, but I need those back. And a light bulb went on. And I said to him, would you want to get educated as a gunsmith? And he goes, you're dreaming, Fran. And I said, I don't think I am. If I could make that happen, would you go for it? And he said, yes. I called his parents. They said, where, how, what? There's one school in California, a community college that trains in gunsmithing. He went there. I ran into his mom at the supermarket, who literally jumping up and down. He was getting all A's. He graduated. He became a gunsmith. I never heard from him until years later. It gets better. The FBI calls. Do you know Danny such and such? I went, oh. He goes, no, it's not what you think. He's applied for a license to transport weapons from movie set locations to train actors.
Whoa.
What do you think? And I said, I want to prepare you. When you see him, you'll get scared. He won't smile. He looks scary, but he's really a sweetheart on the inside. He said, I'm really glad that you were honest with me, because I did meet him. And I just wanted to make sure that I was seeing correctly. He got the license. And a few weeks later, I get a knock on my classroom door. It's Danny. He said, do you think that Lynn can watch your class? That's my assistant. Can you come downstairs for a minute? There was his flatbed truck. And he said, guess what's in there? I said, your guns. And he said, I'm on my way to a movie set. Thank you, Fran. That's
So
just
beautiful.
one. Oh,
Mm,
I could sit and talk for hours about these kids.
that's so inspiring. That's incredible. It's so inspiring to hear how intentional design and authentic connection can transform student outcomes. especially for learners who often feel unseen in our traditional classrooms. Before we wrap up, what's
Yes.
one piece of advice you would give to educators or school leaders who want to start building wellness into their daily practices?
Don't be afraid to be an innovator, to take a leap of faith, to overcome barriers, resistance, especially in secondary schools.
Mhm.
Pave the way with clarity and the hope for really positive outcomes. Take a risk. Be an innovator. It's worth it.
What a beautiful way to end this. I just wish we can
Thank
continue. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Fran, for sharing your journey and the vision behind autonomy. For our listeners, remember, inclusion starts with understanding, and every student can thrive when we create systems that see their strengths. Fran, this is so amazing, and I know most of my listeners will benefit so much from your experience and this great tool that you have created. And I say to educators, parents out there, if they want to reach out to you or check out tools or strategies, how can they get to you?
you. Great. So check out my website, www.autonome101.com. That's AUTONOME 101.com. Or reach out to me directly, Fran, Fran, at Autonomy, AUTONOME 101.com. And I'm happy to entertain conversations with parents, educational leaders. Really, my dream is to reach as many young people as possible, because schools is where we can make that happen and provide our kids with the protective skills that they need in a proactive Tier 1 universal.
I hope we'll have another opportunity to invite you again. And when we do, we'll have the honor of still having or continuing this discussion. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Unstitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks with Dr. Stanley Ekiyor. Until next time, keep leading with empathy and purpose. You can go to our website, www.warabiassociates.com, or tune into any major podcast platforms and share your opinions. Thank you for tuning in.